What happens when Hollywood royalty meets daytime television's most unforgiving panel? You won't believe what unfolded when Meghan Markle sat down with Joy Behar and The View co-hosts in what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview. This wasn't just another celebrity appearance gone wrong. It became a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral completely out of control on live television. From the moment Meghan Markle walked onto the set, the tension was palpable. What started as a seemingly innocent book promotion turned into one of the most heated confrontations in daytime television history. The Duchess arrived wearing a cream-colored blazer, her signature confident smile plastered across her face. But seasoned viewers could sense something brewing beneath the surface. Joy Behar, never one to hold back, had clearly come prepared for battle. Welcome back to The View. I'm Joy Behar, and we're here with Meghan Markle. Joy announced with that familiar edge in her voice that regular viewers knew meant trouble was coming. The studio audience applauded politely, but the energy felt forced, almost artificial. Meghan settled into her chair, crossing her legs with practiced elegance, but her tight grip on her coffee mug revealed the first crack in her composed facade. "Meghan, thank you for being here," Joy continued, her tone already carrying an undertone that suggested this wouldn't be the typical softball interview. "You're here to talk about your new children's book, but I think our viewers are more interested in some of the other projects you've been working on lately." The other co-hosts exchanged knowing glances. Whoopi Goldberg leaned back in her chair with a look that said she could smell drama from a mile away. Sarah Haynes shifted uncomfortably, while Sunny Hostin maintained her lawyer's poker face, pen poised for the moment to strike. "Well, Joy, I'm excited to talk about anything that helps children develop empathy and understanding," Meghan replied, her media training kicking in automatically. But her voice carried a slight defensiveness that Joy's sharp ears caught immediately. "Empathy and understanding," Joy repeated slowly, letting the words hang like smoke. "That's interesting because I've been wondering about the empathy and understanding you've shown your own family lately." The studio fell silent. Even the camera operators seemed to hold their breath. This was the first real jab. Meghan's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, but she recovered quickly. "I think family relationships are complicated, Joy, and I've always believed in handling private matters privately," she replied. But her voice had gained an edge that hadn't been there moments before. Sunny Hostin jumped in, sensing blood in the water. "But Meghan, when you put your family business on international television, in interviews, in Netflix documentaries, can you really call it private anymore?" The audience murmured their approval. This was the kind of direct questioning most interviewers wouldn't dare attempt. Meghan straightened in her chair, her Duchess training warring with her natural instinct to defend herself. "There's a difference between sharing your truth and exploiting family drama for entertainment," she shot back. It was the first clear sign she was ready to fight fire with fire. Joy's eyes lit up like a predator spotting wounded prey. "Your truth? That's a very California way of putting it, isn't it? But what about everyone else's truth? What about your father's truth? Your sister's truth?" "My father chose to work with the tabloids against me," Meghan said, her voice rising slightly. "That's not my truth. That's a fact." "But sweetheart," Joy continued, her condescending tone cutting like a knife, "don't you think there might be more to the story? Don't you think maybe, just maybe, you played a role in how things went down?" The co-hosts watched the exchange like spectators at a tennis match. Whoopi remained strategically silent, letting Joy do the heavy lifting. Sarah looked visibly uncomfortable, while Sunny seemed to be taking mental notes. Meghan took a sip of her coffee, clearly buying time. When she set the mug down, her hand trembled slightly. Barely noticeable to the naked eye, but the HD cameras caught everything. "Joy, I came here to talk about children's literacy and empowerment, not to relitigate family drama that the media has already dissected ad nauseum," Meghan said, attempting to regain control. "But that's just it," Joy pressed on. "You can't separate the two, can you? You want to talk about empowering children, but what kind of example are you setting when you cut off your own family? When you make accusations on international television without giving them a chance to defend themselves?" The studio audience was completely engaged, some nodding in agreement with Joy, others looking sympathetic toward Meghan. This divided reaction made for great television and even better social media buzz. Meghan's jaw tightened. "That's a very unfair characterization of what happened. My family had multiple opportunities to defend themselves. They chose to work with tabloids instead of working with me." "Or maybe," Sunny interjected smoothly, "they felt they had no choice but to defend themselves publicly because you were already doing your defending publicly. When you tell Oprah that someone in the royal family made racist comments about your son, that's not exactly keeping things private, is it?" The gloves were officially off. Meghan turned to face Sunny directly, her composure cracking just enough to reveal the fire underneath. "Are you seriously questioning whether I should have spoken up about racism directed at my child? I'm questioning the timing, the venue, and the lack of specificity that allowed people to draw their own conclusions and potentially implicate innocent people," Sunny replied with prosecutorial precision. Joy seized the moment to escalate. "And speaking of timing, isn't it convenient that all these revelations came out right when you needed to rehabilitate your public image? Right when you needed to justify walking away from your royal duties?" Meghan's eyes flashed dangerously. "Convenient? You think it was convenient for me to relive the most traumatic experiences of my life on international television? You think it was convenient to have my mental health struggles dissected by millions of people?" The tension in the studio reached a boiling point. What began as pointed questions had evolved into something deeply personal and volatile. And this was just the beginning, because what happened next would make television history. Joy Behar wasn't finished, not by a long shot. She leaned forward in her chair, the predatory gleam in her eyes growing brighter as she sensed Meghan's vulnerability. The studio lights felt hotter, the silence more suffocating as everyone waited for the next blow. "Mental health struggles," Joy repeated slowly, her voice dripping with skepticism. "You know what, Meghan? I've been in this business for decades, and I've seen a lot of people use mental health as a shield when they get called out for their behavior. Are we really supposed to believe that you, someone who worked as an actress, who dealt with Hollywood pressure, suddenly couldn't handle being a royal?" The audacity of the question sent shockwaves through the studio. Several audience members audibly gasped. Even Whoopi raised an eyebrow, though she stayed silent. Sarah looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, while Sunny's legal mind was clearly calculating her next move. The air inside the studio felt electric. Meghan's lips parted slightly, as if searching for the right words, but the sting of Joy's question clearly hit its mark. The audience waited in tense silence, some shifting uncomfortably, others leaning forward in anticipation. Meghan finally drew a slow, deliberate breath and spoke with icy control. "Joy, with all due respect, mental health isn't a shield. It's a reality. Struggling with depression, with anxiety, with feeling trapped, those are not weaknesses. They're human experiences. And to dismiss them as excuses is not only unfair to me, it's dangerous to the millions of people watching who may be suffering in silence." For the first time that morning, the audience erupted in applause. A wave of support seemed to wash over the Duchess, but Joy didn't flinch. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and smirked, as if she'd been waiting for that exact answer. Sunny Hostin saw the opening and went for it. "Meghan, no one is dismissing mental health struggles," she said smoothly, "but you have to acknowledge the optics. You spoke about mental health while simultaneously pursuing multi-million-dollar media deals. Doesn't that send a conflicting message that the pain became part of the brand?" The room gasped again. Meghan's jaw tightened as she turned toward Sunny. So, let me get this straight. You're suggesting that because I refused to suffer in silence, because I tried to turn my experience into something that could help others, that somehow makes it less valid? Her voice cracked slightly at the end, betraying the emotional toll. Before Sunny could reply, Whoopi finally broke her silence. Ladies, she said, her tone half amused, half weary. We've got to remember this isn't a courtroom. Meghan's not on trial here. Her attempt at levity earned a ripple of nervous laughter, but the tension in the room remained razor-sharp. Joy pounced on the moment. Oh, Whoopi, I think the public deserves answers. Meghan, you talk about truth, about compassion, about breaking cycles. But critics say you also broke trust. Trust with your family, trust with an institution, even trust with the public who once adored you. How do you answer that? Meghan's eyes hardened. I answer it by saying that no amount of tradition, no title, no duty should come at the expense of one's mental health, one's safety, or one's child. If breaking cycles means breaking trust with people who refuse to protect me, then so be it. The audience erupted again, this time split almost down the middle. Some clapped in support, others shook their heads, whispering disapproval. The studio suddenly felt less like a talk show and more like a public reckoning. Sarah Haynes, who had been quiet until now, leaned forward nervously. Can I just say something? She interjected softly. All eyes turned to her. Maybe the issue isn't about who's right or wrong here. Maybe it's about the fact that this conversation, messy as it is, shows how divided people are. Meghan, your story means a lot to some. To others, it feels like betrayal. But maybe both can exist at the same time. It was a rare moment of calm in an otherwise stormy segment. Meghan nodded slowly, acknowledging Sarah's words, but Joy wasn't about to let the temperature drop. Sure, Sarah, but let's not sugarcoat this, Joy snapped. Meghan, you've made millions telling your side of the story. When does the other side get a fair hearing? Or are you the only one who gets to define the narrative? That question landed like a grenade. Meghan's face flushed as she leaned forward, her voice trembling but fierce. I didn't silence anyone, Joy. My family has had the biggest platform in the world for generations. If they wanted to speak, they could. They still can. What I won't accept is being painted as the villain for finally daring to use my own voice. The crowd exploded, cheers and boos colliding in a storm of noise. Producers scrambled behind the scenes, cameras zoomed in and out, and social media lit up as viewers rushed to clip the confrontation. The segment had spiraled far beyond children's books, far beyond soft promotion. This was raw, unfiltered conflict, and it was happening live. And as the camera cut to commercial, Meghan and Joy locked eyes across the table. Two women unwilling to back down. Two narratives colliding in front of millions. The fireworks weren't over. In fact, they had only just begun. When the cameras returned from the break, the studio air was still thick with tension. Meghan had adjusted her blazer, regaining her composure, while Joy leaned forward, lips curled in that trademark smirk that promised the fight wasn't over. The producers clearly knew they had struck gold. The segment wasn't being cut short. Instead, the stage was set for round 2. Welcome back, Joy said with deliberate cheer, her tone dripping with irony. We're here with Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, and things have gotten spirited. The audience chuckled nervously, sensing they were about to witness something historic. Meghan's smile was polite, but her eyes betrayed a spark of fire. I think spirited conversations are healthy, she said evenly. It means people care. Sunny leaned in again, legal pad in hand like she was preparing for cross-examination. Let's talk about care, Meghan. You've spoken often about wanting privacy for your family, for your children. Yet you've also chosen the most public platforms imaginable. Oprah, Netflix, Spotify, And now, The View. How do you reconcile those two? Meghan's expression sharpened. There's a difference between privacy and silence, Sonny. I never asked to disappear. What I asked for was control over my story, control over my children's lives, control over my well-being. Privacy doesn't mean invisibility. It means boundaries. The audience applauded, but Joy wasn't impressed. She leaned forward, her voice low and cutting. Boundaries are one thing, but critics say what you really wanted was control over the narrative. And when you didn't get it, you walked away. First from your family, then from the monarchy. So the question is, do you really want privacy, or do you want power? That single word, power, hung in the air like a thunderclap. Meghan's eyes narrowed. Joy, let me be clear. If speaking out against racism, if protecting my mental health, if demanding respect for my family is called seeking power, then maybe we need to redefine the word. Because what I wanted wasn't power. It was survival. The studio gasped. Even Whoopi, who had tried to remain detached, leaned forward now, her voice unusually gentle. That's a strong word, Meghan. Survival. Yes, Meghan replied firmly. Because when you are silenced, when your character is attacked, when your child is targeted before he can even speak for himself, that's not about privilege. That's about survival. The applause was thunderous this time, but Joy wasn't finished. She raised her hand to quiet the noise. Okay, fine. Survival. But what about responsibility? You married into one of the most powerful families in the world. Doesn't survival also mean learning to compromise, to respect the traditions you chose to be part of? Or is survival just whatever Meghan Markle decides it is? The audience groaned at the bluntness of the question. Meghan inhaled sharply, her hands tightening in her lap. Then she spoke with a calm intensity that seemed to silence even her critics. I compromised every day. I bent until I broke. And when I finally stood up, when I finally said, "This isn't working for me, this isn't safe," suddenly I was the problem. But let me tell you something, Joy. If survival makes me the problem, then I'll wear that label proudly. The studio erupted once more, half the room cheering, the other half shaking their heads in disbelief. As the co-hosts tried to interject, the conversation had clearly transcended promotion, gossip, or daytime chatter. This was no longer about Meghan's book, or even about her family. It had become a raw debate about truth, accountability, and who gets to control the narrative. And as the segment neared its end, Joy leaned back, eyes glittering, and delivered the parting shot that would dominate headlines for weeks. Well, Meghan, whether you call it truth, survival, or power, one thing's for sure, you've made sure the world will never stop talking about you. Meghan met her gaze unflinching. And maybe that's the point, Joy. Not to make the world talk about me, but to make them listen. The studio audience exploded in applause, boos, and gasps all at once. Producers rushed to wrap the segment. The cameras zoomed in on Meghan's resolute face, and just like that, daytime television history was made.